Imagine a tree that can survive brutal -25°F winters, endure snow and ice, and yet produce fruit that tastes like something straight out of the tropics. It sounds impossible, almost like a botanical myth, but this tree exists. It's known as the pawpaw tree, scientifically called Asimina triloba, and while it's native to parts of North America, importing certain varieties or plant material of this tree into many countries is surprisingly restricted or even illegal. Why would a hardy fruit tree with delicious tropical flavor face import bans? The answer involves agriculture protection, invasive species risks, and plant disease control. Let's explore the fascinating story behind this unusual tree and why governments are so cautious about it. Most tropical fruits, like mangoes, bananas, and papayas, require warm climates to survive. They cannot tolerate frost, let alone deep winter freezes, but the pawpaw tree is different. It grows naturally in regions where winter temperatures can plunge well below freezing. In fact, mature trees can survive temperatures as low as -25°F or -32°C. Despite this cold tolerance, the fruit it produces tastes surprisingly tropical. So, many people describe pawpaw fruit as a mix of banana, mango, pineapple, and, vanilla custard. The texture is soft and creamy, almost like pudding. Because of this unique flavor, the fruit has developed a loyal following among gardeners and food enthusiasts. In recent years, interest in growing pawpaw trees has just exploded. Gardeners in colder regions see it as a chance to grow a tropical-like fruit without living in the tropics. The pawpaw tree isn't actually exotic in its homeland. It's native to the eastern United States and parts of southern Canada. Indigenous peoples cultivated and ate the fruit long before European settlers arrived. Historical records show that early explorers, including pioneers and settlers, relied on pawpaws for food. Even George Washington reportedly enjoyed the fruit chilled as a dessert. Despite this history, the fruit never became a mainstream commercial crop. Pawpaws spoil quickly after harvesting and are difficult to ship long distances. For modern agriculture, which depends heavily on transport and shelf life, this made the fruit impractical for large-scale markets. As a result, pawpaws remained mostly a regional or backyard fruit. If the tree is so beneficial and hardy, why do some countries ban or heavily restrict its importation? There are several reasons. First, protection from plant diseases. The biggest reason is biosecurity. When plants are transported across borders, they can carry invisible threats such as fungi, viruses, bacteria, or insect pests. These organisms may not harm the tree itself but could, devastate local crops. Governments enforce strict plant quarantine rules to prevent agricultural disasters. A single imported plant carrying a new disease could cause billions of dollars in damage. For example, many countries restrict plant imports to prevent outbreaks similar to citrus greening disease or chestnut blight, both of which have destroyed entire agricultural industries in the past. Even though pawpaws themselves are relatively resistant to pests, the soil, roots, or leaves could harbor harmful organisms. Second, the risk of becoming invasive. Another concern is that non-native plants can sometimes become invasive species. An invasive species spreads aggressively in a new environment, outcompeting native plants and disrupting ecosystems. While pawpaws generally grow slowly and prefer specific conditions, regulators often take a cautious approach. Introducing a new species without understanding its ecological impact can lead to, honestly, irreversible consequences. History has many examples of well-intentioned introductions that later caused environmental damage. Okay, so, number 3. Agricultural protection laws. Many countries actually have pretty strict plant import regulations, which means you might need permits, inspections, and even quarantine procedures. And honestly, these rules apply to almost all plant species, not just pawpaws. Importing seeds, saplings, or cuttings without proper approval can violate agricultural laws that are really meant to protect domestic farming industries. I get it, for home gardeners, this can definitely feel frustrating, but from a national agriculture perspective, these rules are there to protect crops, forests, and, food security. Despite import restrictions, the pawpaw tree has several qualities that make it highly desirable. Cold hardiness, yeah, it thrives in climates where most fruit trees struggle. And, it really doesn't need much in the way of pesticides because pawpaws contain natural compounds that repel many insects. The fruit itself is packed with vitamins, antioxidants, magnesium, and potassium, making it seriously nutritious. Plus, unlike a lot of fruit trees, pawpaws can actually grow in partial shade, which is pretty uncommon. Because of these traits, researchers and agricultural enthusiasts are exploring ways to cultivate improved varieties. Universities and breeding programs have already developed pawpaw cultivars that produce larger fruits, better flavor, and higher yields. In recent years, the fruit has gained attention among chefs, gardeners, and food explorers. Farmers markets in parts of North America now feature pawpaw fruit during harvest season. Specialty desserts, ice creams, and baked goods, made from pawpaw, are also becoming more popular. There are even pawpaw festivals dedicated entirely to celebrating the fruit. However, because the fruit spoils quickly and cannot travel far, it remains a rare treat outside regions where it grows. The pawpaw tree represents something unique in the plant world, a tropical-tasting fruit that thrives in freezing climates. As climate patterns change and food security becomes more important, interest in resilient crops like pawpaw may continue to grow. But, international plant movement will likely remain tightly regulated. Protecting ecosystems and agriculture from invasive species and diseases will always be a priority. So while the tree itself isn't inherently dangerous, the rules surrounding its importation reflect a larger effort to protect global agriculture. In the end, the pawpaw tree stands as a reminder that nature can still surprise us, a fruit that tastes like the tropics, growing on a tree that laughs at winter.